In a small, quiet town nestled in the heart of the Midwest, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The streets were lined with modest houses, each one painted in warm tones that reflected the simplicity of its residents' lives. At the center of this sleepy community stood Lincoln High School, an aging building where generations of students had passed through its halls. Among the teachers who shaped young minds was Mrs. Evelyn Harper, a woman whose presence commanded respect even from those who didn't always understand her. Evelyn was not your typical teacher. She wasn't loud or flashy. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made people sit up and take notice. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, was always neatly tied back, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. Not a whispered joke during class nor a flicker of curiosity on a student's face. For over 2 decades, Evelyn had taught history, weaving tales of ancient civilizations, great wars, and forgotten empires into lessons that some found fascinating, but others dismissed as boring. But what most people didn't know about Evelyn was that she had secrets so extraordinary they would have sounded like science fiction if anyone had dared to believe them. These secrets weren't just stories she told to entertain herself late at night when the world fell silent. They were real, deeply personal truths that haunted her dreams and fueled her passion for teaching. And yet, no matter how hard she tried to hint at these mysteries during her lectures, few paid attention. Most students saw her as nothing more than a strict disciplinarian, someone whose rules were meant to be tested rather than followed. One such student was Jake Thompson, a boy whose reputation as the class clown preceded him wherever he went. With his mop of unruly blonde hair and mischievous grin, Jake thrived on causing trouble. Whether it was making snide comments under his breath or launching paper airplanes across the room, he seemed determined to disrupt every lesson Evelyn gave. His antics often earned him laughter from his classmates and exasperated sighs from Evelyn, though she rarely lost her temper. Instead, she would calmly pause mid-sentence, fix him with a piercing gaze, and say, "Jake, I trust you'll find today's material far more engaging than whatever distraction currently occupies your mind." It was during one such moment, a particularly dull lecture on the construction of the Egyptian pyramids, that Jake decided to push Evelyn further than ever before. Leaning back in his chair, he smirked and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, Mrs. Harper, maybe aliens built the pyramids. You probably think that too, don't you?" His words sent ripples of laughter throughout the classroom, and for a brief moment, Evelyn froze. She hadn't expected such mockery, especially not here in front of her students. But rather than lash out or retreat, she simply smiled, a knowing, almost sad smile, and replied, "You'd be surprised, Jake, at how much truth can sometimes hide behind jokes." The bell rang shortly afterward, signaling the end of class, and the students filed out, still chuckling about Jake's remark. None of them noticed the way Evelyn lingered at her desk, staring absently at the chalkboard as if searching for answers written between the lines. What they also failed to realize was that Jake's comment had struck a nerve. Not because it embarrassed her, but because it came dangerously close to something she had kept hidden for years. Evelyn's fascination with the stars began long before she became a teacher. Growing up on her family's farm on the outskirts of town, she spent countless nights lying on the grass, gazing up at the vast expanse above. On clear evenings, the sky shimmered with countless pinpricks of light, each one promising untold wonders. But there were nights when something else appeared, bright, pulsating lights that danced across the horizon in patterns too precise to be natural. At first, she thought they were planes or satellites, but their movements defied logic. Once, she swore she saw a glowing disk descend silently toward the fields, only to vanish without a trace moments later. When she excitedly told her parents about these sightings, they dismissed her claims as childish imagination. "You've been reading too many comic books," her father said with a chuckle. Her mother, kinder but equally skeptical, suggested she focus on more practical pursuits. Over time, Evelyn learned to keep her observations to herself, burying her curiosity beneath layers of normalcy. Still, the memory of those lights stayed with her, burning brightly in the recesses of her mind. Years later, while studying archaeology in college, Evelyn stumbled upon documents that reignited her interest in the unknown. Hidden away in dusty archives were accounts of strange artifacts discovered around the world, objects whose origins couldn't be explained by conventional science. Some researchers speculated they might be evidence of extraterrestrial contact, remnants left behind by visitors from another time or place. Intrigued, Evelyn delved deeper, poring over ancient texts and obscure manuscripts. She uncovered references to star beings worshipped as gods, celestial chariots described in vivid detail, and warnings of cosmic upheaval foretold by prophets. The more she read, the more convinced she became that humanity's history was intertwined with forces beyond Earth. Her peers laughed at her theories, calling her ideas fanciful and unrealistic. Professors advised her to stick to safer topics if she wanted to succeed academically. Yet Evelyn refused to abandon her quest for knowledge. Instead, she channeled her findings into her teaching, subtly incorporating hints of cosmic significance into her lessons. She spoke of advanced ancient technologies, unexplained architectural marvels, and recurring symbols found in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. To her disappointment, most students tuned out, dismissing her words as irrelevant ramblings. Only a handful showed genuine interest, and even then, their enthusiasm was fleeting. Despite the ridicule and indifference, Evelyn persisted. Deep down, she believed that someday, someone would listen. Someone would recognize the urgency in her voice, the weight of the truths she carried. Little did she know that day was closer than she imagined. For all her careful planning and quiet determination, fate had other plans. Plans that would thrust her into the spotlight and force her to confront the very mysteries she had spent a lifetime trying to unravel. As the sun dipped below the horizon, that evening, casting long shadows across the schoolyard, Evelyn packed up her belongings and prepared to leave. The hallways were empty, save for the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of autumn leaves. It was peaceful, almost serene. But peace, Evelyn would soon discover, was an illusion, one that was about to shatter in ways she could never have anticipated. Evelyn Harper had always been a woman of routine. Every evening after school, she would spend an hour or two grading papers in her classroom before heading home to her modest house on the edge of town. The solitude gave her time to think, to reflect on the day's lessons and the curious mind she tried so hard to inspire. But tonight, as she gathered her things and switched off the lights, something felt different. The air outside was unusually still, devoid of the usual rustle of leaves or chirping crickets. Even the distant hum of cars on the highway seemed muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Stepping out into the cool night, Evelyn paused for a moment to glance up at the sky. It was clear, dotted with countless stars that sparkled like diamonds against the velvet expanse. She loved nights like this, nights when the universe felt close enough to touch. But tonight there was something else, a faint glow hovering above the football field. At first she thought it might be a trick of the light, perhaps a reflection from the moon or a street lamp. Yet as she squinted, the glow grew brighter, taking on a shape that defied explanation. It was massive, triangular, and eerily silent. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, shifting colors between silver and gold. Evelyn's heart raced as she realized what she was looking at, an unidentified flying object, larger than anything she'd ever imagined. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to retreat to the safety of the school building. But curiosity rooted her to the spot. This wasn't just some random phenomenon. It was deliberate, purposeful. And then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from the craft, enveloping her completely. For a moment, everything went white. Evelyn felt weightless, as though she were floating in a sea of nothingness. Panic surged through her veins, but before she could scream, the sensation shifted. The light faded, and she found herself standing inside the craft. The interior was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Smooth, metallic walls curved seamlessly around her, and strange symbols pulsed faintly along the edges. There were no windows, no visible controls, just an overwhelming sense of otherworldliness. Then they appeared. The beings. They were tall, slender, and utterly alien. Their skin was pale, almost translucent. and their large, almond-shaped eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Evelyn froze, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Were these the same star beings she'd read about in ancient texts? Had they come to judge humanity, to intervene in ways she couldn't yet comprehend? Before she could form a coherent thought, one of the beings stepped forward, or rather, glided, for they moved with an effortless grace that seemed to defy gravity. To Evelyn's astonishment, it began speaking, not with words but directly into her mind. The voice was calm, measured, and carried an authority that brooked no argument. "Do not fear," it said. "We mean you no harm." Evelyn's knees nearly buckled under the weight of the situation. She wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but her voice failed her. Instead, she simply nodded, hoping they understood her compliance. The being continued, explaining that they were scouts from a galactic alliance tasked with monitoring Earth's progress. Humanity, they said, was advancing rapidly, too rapidly for some factions among the stars. Certain groups viewed Earth as reckless, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous. These factions advocated for preemptive action, believing it better to neutralize the threat before it spiraled out of control. Evelyn listened intently, her thoughts racing. She had spent years studying the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked finally, her voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The being tilted its head slightly as if considering her question. "You carry knowledge within you," it replied. "Knowledge that others have ignored or dismissed. We believe you can help guide your people toward unity and understanding. Without such cohesion, Earth will remain vulnerable." Evelyn swallowed hard, trying to make sense of their words. Unity? Understanding? How could she possibly achieve those things when half her students barely paid attention in class? Still, the beings pressed on, revealing a shocking truth. Buried deep beneath Earth's surface lay remnants of ancient starships left behind by long-lost allies. If activated, these ships could serve as both protection and proof of humanity's potential. But activating them required cooperation, trust, and a shared vision, qualities sorely lacking in a fractured world. "We cannot intervene directly," the being added. "But we can offer guidance. Will you accept this responsibility?" Evelyn hesitated. The weight of the decision pressed down on her shoulders. Accepting meant stepping into the unknown, risking ridicule, imprisonment, or worse. Declining meant leaving humanity defenseless against forces it couldn't possibly comprehend. Finally, with a deep breath, she nodded. "I'll do whatever I can," she whispered. "But I'll need help." The being extended a slender hand, placing a small crystalline device into Evelyn's palm. "This contains coordinates to the first ship," it explained. "Time is short. Use it wisely." With that, the scene dissolved once more into blinding light, and Evelyn found herself back on the football field, clutching the crystal tightly in her fist. The walk home felt surreal. Each step seemed heavier than the last, as though the gravity of her newfound mission weighed her down physically as well as mentally. By the time she reached her front door, her mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubts. Who could she trust with this information? How could she convince anyone, let alone entire nations, that the fate of humanity rested on uncovering ancient alien technology? That night, sleep eluded her. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the crystal as if willing it to reveal its secrets. It pulsed faintly, casting soft hues of blue and green across the room. For hours, she pored over maps and old documents, cross-referencing the coordinates, etched into the crystal with locations mentioned in mythologies and historical records. Slowly, patterns emerged, patterns that pointed to a desolate canyon hundreds of miles away, rumored to be the site of mysterious disappearances and unexplained phenomena. By morning, Evelyn had formulated a plan. She couldn't tackle this alone. She needed allies. But who? Her colleagues would think she'd lost her mind, and authorities would likely dismiss her claims outright. That left only one option: her students. Not all of them, of course, just the ones she trusted most, the ones who had shown glimpses of curiosity and intelligence beneath their youthful bravado. Over the next few days, Evelyn subtly began weaving cryptic clues into her lectures. She spoke of hidden treasures buried beneath the earth, of ancient guardians watching over humanity, and of celestial events that signaled change. At first, her students laughed it off, assuming she was indulging in another one of her eccentric theories. But Jake Thompson, ever the skeptic, started paying closer attention. He noticed the urgency in her tone, the way her eyes lit up when discussing certain topics. Intrigued, he decided to dig deeper. Using the school library's outdated computers, Jake began researching the subjects Evelyn had mentioned. To his surprise, he discovered eerie parallels between myths from different cultures and modern UFO sightings. Ancient carvings depicted spacecraft eerily similar to descriptions of flying saucers. Crop circles appeared overnight near sites associated with ley lines, energy pathways believed to connect sacred places. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that Mrs. Harper wasn't just spinning tales, she was onto something real. Jake wasn't the only one noticing changes in Evelyn's behavior. Sarah Chen, a quiet but brilliant student, approached her after class one afternoon. "Mrs. Harper," she began hesitantly, "are you okay? You've been acting different lately." Evelyn smiled, a mixture of pride and apprehension flickering across her face. "Different how, Sarah?" she asked gently. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Just intense. Like you're trying to tell us something important, but you can't say it outright." Evelyn studied the girl for a moment, weighing her options. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "Sometimes, Sarah, the truth isn't easy to hear. But if you're willing to listen, and I mean really listen, I might have something extraordinary to share." Sarah nodded eagerly, and Evelyn knew she'd made the right choice. Over the following weeks, she quietly recruited a small group of students, including Jake and Sarah, explaining her story in fragments to avoid overwhelming them. Together they formed an unlikely team, united by a shared goal, to locate the buried starship and unlock its secrets. As preparations progressed, strange occurrences began unfolding around the globe. Skies parted unexpectedly, revealing enormous structures floating silently in orbit. Governments scrambled to explain the sightings, issuing vague statements about atmospheric anomalies and experimental technology. Social media erupted with speculation, fueling panic and conspiracy theories alike. Some claimed the end of the world was near. Others insisted humanity was finally meeting its cosmic neighbors. Amid the chaos, Evelyn and her students worked tirelessly, piecing together clues and planning their journey. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew failure wasn't an option. Earth's survival depended on their success, and somewhere deep inside each of them felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity wasn't as alone as it had always believed. The journey to uncover the buried starship was anything but simple. Armed with Evelyn's cryptic clues, her small team of students set out on what felt like a mission straight out of a movie. Yet, unlike the polished adventures they'd seen on screen, this one was messy, unpredictable, and filled with challenges that tested their resolve at every turn. For Evelyn, it was both exhilarating and terrifying. She knew the stakes were higher than anyone could imagine, but she also understood the risks involved in dragging her students into something so dangerous. Their first stop was an old library in a neighboring town where Evelyn had traced a reference to the guardians beneath the sands. The librarian, a wiry man with thick glasses and a perpetual frown, eyed them suspiciously as they combed through dusty shelves for obscure books on ancient symbols. Jake, ever the joker, tried to lighten the mood by pretending to decipher hieroglyphics he made up on the spot. "This says we need to bring 3 goats and a bag of potatoes," he whispered loudly, earning stifled giggles from Sarah and the others. But Evelyn shot him a look that silenced him instantly. This wasn't a game. It was life or death. After hours of searching, they finally found what they were looking for. A faded manuscript detailing the locations of sacred sites marked by celestial alignments. Each site corresponded to a star constellation visible during specific times of the year. Evelyn spread a map across the table, comparing the coordinates engraved on the crystal with those mentioned in the text. Slowly, patterns emerged, pointing toward a remote desert canyon known locally as Devil's Hollow. Legends spoke of strange lights appearing there at night, along with tales of travelers who vanished without a trace. With their destination set, the group packed supplies and prepared for the trip. It wasn't easy. None of them had experience camping in harsh environments, let alone navigating treacherous terrain while evading potential threats. Still, determination outweighed fear, or so they told themselves. They rented an old van from a mechanic who barely glanced at their fake IDs, loaded it with tents, food, water, and tools, and set off before dawn. The drive itself was grueling. The van rattled and groaned as they ventured farther from civilization, the roads growing narrower and rougher until they dissolved entirely into dirt paths. By the time they reached the edge of Devil's Hollow, the sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and red. The canyon stretched before them like a gaping wound in the earth, its jagged cliffs casting long shadows over the barren landscape. It was beautiful in a desolate sort of way, but there was an undeniable sense of foreboding in the air. Setting up camp under the cover of darkness, the group huddled around a small fire, discussing their plan for the next day. Evelyn explained that they needed to locate a series of markers etched into the rocks, symbols resembling constellations, that would lead them to the entrance of the hidden ship. She warned them to stay alert. If the legends about Devil's Hollow were true, they weren't the only ones interested in finding the artifact. As predicted, trouble came quickly. Early the next morning, as they began their search, they encountered their first obstacle. A sudden sandstorm that swept through the canyon with startling ferocity. Visibility dropped to almost zero, forcing them to take shelter behind a cluster of boulders. Sand stung their faces and clogged their lungs, making it hard to breathe. Jake cursed under his breath, clutching his backpack tightly to keep it from being blown away. "What kind of stupid treasure hunt is this?" he muttered, though no one replied. Even he knew better than to complain when nature itself seemed determined to stop them. When the storm finally subsided, they pressed on, scanning the rocky walls for the symbols Evelyn had described. Hours passed with little success, and frustration began to creep in. Just as doubt started to settle over the group, Sarah spotted something, a faint carving high up on a cliff face. It matched one of the constellations perfectly. Excited, they climbed closer, discovering more symbols nearby. Following the trail, they descended deeper into the canyon, where the air grew cooler and the silence heavier, but their progress was short-lived. As they rounded a bend, they stumbled upon a makeshift camp occupied by strangers. Men dressed in tactical gear, armed with rifles and advanced equipment. One of them stepped forward, his expression cold and calculating. "You're not supposed to be here," he said flatly. Evelyn instinctively stepped in front of her students, shielding them with her body. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We're salvagers," the man replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "And we've been sent to secure whatever's down there before anyone else gets their hands on it." His eyes flicked to the crystal in Evelyn's hand, narrowing slightly. "Hand that over and maybe we'll let you walk away." Evelyn tightened her grip on the crystal, realizing these men worked for the shadowy organizations she'd read about, groups seeking to exploit alien technology for their own gain. There was no way she could trust them. Thinking quickly, she signaled subtly to Jake, who nodded almost imperceptibly. On her cue, the group scattered, ducking behind rocks and sprinting in different directions. The men shouted angrily, firing warning shots into the air as they gave chase. Splitting up turned out to be a risky but effective strategy. While some of the men pursued Jake and another student, Evelyn and Sarah managed to slip away unnoticed. Using the cover of the canyon's uneven terrain, they doubled back toward the carved symbols, hoping to reach the entrance before the others regrouped. Adrenaline coursed through their bodies as they scrambled over rocks and slid down embankments, their hearts pounding in rhythm with their footsteps. Finally, they arrived at the base of a towering cliff, There, partially obscured by fallen debris, was a massive stone door adorned with intricate carvings. Evelyn recognized the design immediately. It matched the patterns on the crystal. Kneeling, she inserted the device into a slot at the center of the door. A low hum filled the air as the ground trembled beneath their feet. Slowly the door began to open, revealing a dark passageway leading underground. Before they could celebrate, however, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the canyon. The men had caught up. Evelyn grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her inside just as the first bullet ricocheted off the stone doorway. Darkness enveloped them as the door sealed shut behind them, cutting off all light. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm them. Then Evelyn remembered the flashlight in her bag. Switching it on, she illuminated the narrow corridor ahead, revealing smooth metallic walls that gleamed faintly in the beam of light. "This is it," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "We're inside." The passage sloped downward, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. Along the way, they encountered more symbols glowing softly on the walls, guiding them deeper into the structure. Despite the danger lurking outside, Evelyn couldn't help but marvel at the craftsmanship. Whoever had built this place possessed technology far beyond anything humanity currently understood. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a cavernous chamber dominated by the unmistakable silhouette of a starship. It was enormous, its sleek hull reflecting the dim light like liquid silver. Panels along its sides pulsed rhythmically, as if the ship itself were alive. Evelyn approached cautiously, running her fingers over the surface. It was warm to the touch, humming softly beneath her palm. Activating the ship, however, proved to be a challenge. A control panel emerged from the floor, displaying rows of alien glyphs that shifted and rearranged themselves constantly. Evelyn recognized some of them from her studies, but translating them required intense concentration. With Sarah's help, she began inputting commands, piecing together fragments of meaning from memory. Every mistake triggered alarms that echoed ominously through the chamber, raising the risk of drawing unwanted attention. Meanwhile, above ground, Jake and the others had managed to evade capture and reunite with Evelyn and Sarah. Together, they worked feverishly to decipher the final sequence needed to power up the ship. Time was running out. The hostile men outside had begun using explosives in an attempt to breach the entrance. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the explosions grew louder, shaking the entire structure. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship roared to life. Its engines hummed to a deafening crescendo, bathing the chamber in a brilliant blue light. Evelyn guided everyone aboard, sealing the hatch behind them, just as the first cracks appeared in the ceiling. The ship ascended rapidly, breaking free of the canyon and soaring into the sky. As they looked down at the shrinking landscape below, the group shared a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. They had found the starship. But their victory was short-lived. On the horizon, dozens of alien vessels loomed ominously, their weapons trained directly at them. The battle for Earth's survival was about to begin. As the starship broke free of Devil's Hollow and ascended into the sky, Evelyn and her students were momentarily awestruck by the sheer scale of their achievement. The ship was breathtakingly beautiful, its sleek design unlike anything humanity had ever created. Panels along its surface shimmered with an ethereal glow, pulsating rhythmically as if alive. Inside the control room was a marvel of alien engineering. Smooth metallic walls lined with holographic displays that projected streams of data in unfamiliar symbols. Despite its complexity, the ship seemed to respond instinctively to Evelyn's touch, as though it recognized her connection to the scouts who had entrusted her with this mission. But there was no time to marvel at their discovery. On the horizon, ominous shapes began to emerge from the clouds, dozens of alien vessels, each one larger than the last. Their hulls gleamed menacingly under the sunlight, and their weapon systems glowed ominously, ready to strike. Evelyn's heart sank as she realized what was happening. The hostile faction among the stars had arrived, and they weren't here to negotiate. "Everyone hold on," Evelyn shouted, gripping the controls tightly. She didn't fully understand how to pilot the ship, but instinct guided her movements. With a surge of energy, the starship shot forward, narrowly avoiding a volley of laser blasts that tore through the air where they had been moments before. The students clung to whatever they could find, their faces pale with fear but also determination. They had come too far to give up now. The battle that followed was chaotic and relentless. The alien fleet surrounded them, firing bursts of energy that lit up the sky like fireworks. Each blast rocked the ship violently, sending shockwaves rippling through its interior. Jake, who had always prided himself on his quick thinking, sprang into action. He scrambled to a nearby console, studying the flashing symbols intently. "Mrs. Harper, I think these are targeting coordinates," he yelled over the din. "If we can recalibrate our shields, maybe we can deflect their attacks." Evelyn nodded, trusting Jake's instincts. Together, they worked frantically, inputting commands and adjusting settings while dodging incoming fire. Sarah, meanwhile, focused on monitoring the ship's systems, calling out warnings whenever critical levels dropped dangerously low. "Energy reserves at 40%, she cried as another explosion shook the craft. "We need to conserve power or we won't last much longer." Despite the chaos, Evelyn remained calm, her years of teaching discipline paying off in ways she never imagined. Her voice cut through the noise like a beacon of hope. "Stay focused," she urged her team. "We've got this. Work together and don't lose sight of why we're here, to protect Earth." Their efforts paid off when Jake managed to reroute power to the shield generators, creating a protective barrier around the ship. The next wave of enemy fire ricocheted harmlessly off the glowing force field, buying them precious time, but the reprieve was short-lived. The alien ships regrouped, forming a tight formation that blocked any chance of escape. One massive vessel moved to the forefront, its size dwarfing even the starship. A deep hum resonated through the air as a massive beam of light charged at its core aimed directly at them. "They're preparing something big," Evelyn muttered, her knuckles white as she gripped the controls. "We need to counterattack. Now." Jake glanced at the weapon systems, displayed on his console. "There's a plasma cannon here, but it's locked behind some kind of override protocol," he said urgently. "I can try to bypass it, but it'll take time." "We don't have time," Sarah interjected, pointing at the rapidly charging weapon on the enemy ship. "They're going to fire any second." Evelyn hesitated for only a moment before making a bold decision. "Jake, keep working on the cannon. Sarah, divert all remaining power to the engines. We're going straight for them." Before anyone could protest, she slammed her hand down on the throttle, propelling the ship forward at breakneck speed. The sudden acceleration threw everyone off balance, but Evelyn held steady, her eyes fixed on the target ahead. The alien fleet opened fire again, but Evelyn's piloting skills proved unmatched. She weaved the ship through the barrage with precision, closing the distance between them and the lead vessel. Just as the massive beam fired, Evelyn executed a daring maneuver, spinning the ship sideways to avoid the deadly blast. The heat singed the outer hull, but the ship held together. "Got it," Jake exclaimed triumphantly, slamming his fist onto the console. The plasma cannon roared to life, charging with a brilliant blue light. "Fire at will," he shouted, grinning despite the tension. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She pulled the trigger, unleashing a concentrated burst of energy that streaked across the sky like a comet. The beam struck the lead alien vessel dead center, piercing through its defenses, and causing a chain reaction. Explosions erupted across its surface, engulfing the ship in flames before it disintegrated into nothingness. The rest of the fleet faltered, their formation crumbling as panic spread among their ranks. For a brief moment, silence fell over the battlefield. Then, without warning, the remaining alien ships began retreating, vanishing into the atmosphere as quickly as they had appeared. Evelyn let out a shaky breath, slumping back in her seat as the adrenaline drained from her body. Around her, the students erupted into cheers, hugging each other in relief and disbelief. Against all odds, they had won, or so they thought. Back on Earth, the effects of the battle were immediate and profound. News outlets around the world broadcast footage of the aerial conflict, capturing glimpses of the starship and the alien fleet. Social media exploded with theories and speculation, ranging from government conspiracies to divine intervention. Governments scrambled to address the situation, issuing statements that ranged from denial to vague admissions of extraterrestrial contact. Military forces mobilized, bracing for potential retaliation, while civilians took to the streets in both celebration and protest. Amid the chaos, Evelyn and her students became unlikely heroes. Footage of the starship's heroics circulated widely, sparking debates about humanity's place in the cosmos. For the first time in history, people began looking beyond borders and ideologies, united by a shared sense of awe and vulnerability. Protesters demanded transparency from world leaders, while scientists called for collaboration to study the recovered technology. Even skeptics found themselves questioning long-held beliefs as evidence of extraterrestrial life mounted. Evelyn knew their work wasn't done. Activating the starship had been just the beginning. Now, they needed to ensure humanity was prepared for whatever came next. Returning to Earth, she and her team were greeted as saviors, but Evelyn refused to bask in the spotlight. Instead, she used her newfound influence to advocate for unity and cooperation. In interviews and public speeches, she emphasized the importance of setting aside differences and working together, not just to defend against future threats, but to explore the vast possibilities awaiting humanity among the stars. Her message resonated deeply, inspiring millions to join the cause. Scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens poured resources and expertise into reverse engineering the starship's technology. Factories once dedicated to producing weapons shifted focus to building more advanced spacecraft based on the alien designs. Schools introduced programs focused on space exploration and interstellar diplomacy, ensuring future generations would be equipped to handle the challenges ahead. Jake, whose skepticism had initially driven him to mock Evelyn's teachings, emerged as one of her strongest supporters. Inspired by the adventure and by Evelyn's unwavering belief in humanity's potential, he pursued a career in astrophysics, dedicating his life to unraveling the mysteries of the universe. Sarah, too, found her calling, becoming a leading advocate for global peace and technological equity. Together, they carried forward the legacy of their extraordinary journey, determined to honor the sacrifices made along the way. Yet, even as humanity rallied together, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that their victory was temporary. The hostile aliens may have retreated, but they hadn't been defeated. They had simply withdrawn to regroup. And somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Earth's newly awakened defenses, forces still plotted against humanity's rise. Evelyn often stood alone under the night sky, gazing up at the stars with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also believed in the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as she watched the constellations twinkle above, Evelyn felt a familiar presence, a faint hum that vibrated through the air. Turning slowly, she saw a figure materialize before her, the same scout who had first contacted her weeks earlier. Its glowing eyes met hers, and a telepathic voice echoed in her mind. "You have done well, Evelyn Harper," it said. "But your journey is far from over. The galaxy watches, and the choices you make will shape not only Earth's destiny, but the fate of countless worlds." Evelyn nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of those words. As the scout vanished into the night, she turned back to the stars, resolve strengthening within her. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready. Humanity had taken its first step into the cosmic arena, and Evelyn intended to see it thrive. In the weeks following the battle, life on Earth began to change in ways no one could have predicted. The image of a sleek starship soaring through the skies became an enduring symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to humanity's ability to rise above adversity. For Evelyn Harper and her students, however, the victory came with a heavy burden. They had saved the planet from immediate destruction, but they knew the fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, hostile forces still lurked, watching and waiting for their next move. Evelyn returned to Lincoln High School shortly after the events, resuming her role as a history teacher. To the casual observer, she seemed unchanged, still stern yet compassionate, still devoted to shaping young minds. but those who truly knew her saw the subtle differences. Her lectures carried a new urgency, weaving lessons about ancient civilizations and celestial wonders into calls for unity and innovation. She spoke passionately about humanity's potential, urging her students to dream bigger and reach further than ever before. Her students, too, were forever transformed by the experience. Jake Thompson, once the class clown, now sat at the front of the room, eagerly absorbing every word Evelyn said. His jokes had taken on a sharper edge, blending humor with insights that often caught even Evelyn off guard. Sarah Chen, quieter but equally driven, became a leader among her peers, organizing study groups and extracurricular projects focused on space exploration and diplomacy. Together, they inspired others to embrace curiosity and think beyond the confines of their small town. Outside the classroom, the world was undergoing a revolution. Governments around the globe had set aside decades of rivalry to form the United Earth Alliance, UEA, an international coalition dedicated to defending the planet and advancing its technological capabilities. Factories once used to produce weapons now churned out components for spacecraft modeled after the alien starship. Universities launched programs in astrobiology, quantum mechanics, and interstellar communications, attracting brilliant minds eager to unlock the secrets of the cosmos. Evelyn played a pivotal role in this transformation, serving as both an advisor and ambassador for the UEA. She traveled extensively, speaking at conferences and meeting with world leaders to share her vision of a united humanity ready to step onto the galactic stage. Her speeches resonated deeply, reminding audiences that Earth's greatest strength lay not in its technology or resources, but in its diversity and determination to overcome challenges together. Yet, despite the progress, shadows lingered on the horizon. Reports of strange phenomena continued to surface. Unexplained disappearances, sightings of unidentified craft, and whispers of covert operations aimed at exploiting alien artifacts for personal gain. Evelyn kept these developments close to her chest, knowing full well that humanity's newfound unity was fragile. It would take only one misstep, one act of greed or aggression, to shatter the fragile peace they had built. One evening, as Evelyn prepared to leave the school building after another long day, she noticed something unusual in the sky. A single point of light hovered silently above the football field, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. Her breath caught in her throat, as memories of her first encounter flooded back. Stepping outside, she approached cautiously, half expecting the ground to tremble beneath her feet or a beam of light to envelop her once more. Instead, the air around her grew still, and a voice echoed softly in her mind. Evelyn Harper. It said, calm and measured. Turning, she found herself face to face with the scout who had contacted her weeks earlier. Its presence was as ethereal as ever, its glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. The galaxy watches, the being continued, and your actions have earned you allies among the stars. Many races admire your courage and ingenuity, though some remain wary. Your journey has only begun. Evelyn swallowed hard, steadying herself against the weight of the moment. What happens now? She asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The choice is yours, the scout replied. You may continue to guide humanity toward growth and cooperation, or you may step aside and let others chart the course. But know this: the decisions you make will ripple across the stars, shaping destinies far beyond your own. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Evelyn understood the responsibility placed upon her shoulders. She thought of her students, of the countless lives touched by their mission, and of the billions who looked to the skies with hope and wonder. There was no question in her mind. She couldn't walk away, not when so much depended on her leadership. I'll keep going, she said firmly. We've come too far to stop now. The scout nodded approvingly, its expression unreadable. Then we will stand with you, for a time. But remember, Evelyn, true strength lies not in power, but in connection. Trust in those around you, and together, you will find the answers you seek. With that, the scout vanished, leaving Evelyn alone under the vast expanse of stars. She stood there for a moment, letting the cool night air wash over her. Despite The enormity of the task ahead, she felt a profound sense of purpose. Humanity's story was just beginning, and she intended to see it written with wisdom and grace. Back at home, Evelyn pored over maps, documents, and data collected during their adventure. The starship's systems had provided invaluable insights into alien languages, engineering, and navigation techniques. Working alongside scientists and engineers, she helped piece together fragments of knowledge that promised to revolutionize human understanding of the universe. Breakthroughs came rapidly. New forms of energy, advanced medical treatments, and communication technologies capable of bridging interstellar distances. But Evelyn's greatest contribution was not scientific. It was philosophical. Through her teachings and public appearances, she championed the idea that humanity's survival depended not on domination or conquest, but on empathy and collaboration. She urged people to look beyond their differences and recognize the shared threads that bound them all together. Her message struck a chord, sparking movements for social justice, environmental preservation, and global equality. Jake and Sarah remained at the forefront of these efforts, each carving out their own paths while staying true to the values instilled in them by Evelyn. Jake pursued a career in astrophysics, driven by a desire to explore the mysteries of the universe and ensure humanity's readiness for future encounters. Sarah, meanwhile, became a diplomat, working tirelessly to bridge divides between nations and foster alliances that transcended borders. Their bond deepened over the years, forged not only by shared experiences, but also by a mutual commitment to making the world a better place. Whenever they reunited with Evelyn, whether at conferences or quiet dinners, they marveled at how far they'd come since those early days in the classroom. What had started as a simple lesson plan had grown into a movement that spanned continents and galaxies. Decades passed, and Evelyn's hair turned fully gray, her steps slower but her spirit unbroken. By then, humanity had established colonies on Mars, sent probes to distant star systems, and initiated diplomatic relations with several alien species. The hostile faction that had once threatened Earth had retreated entirely, choosing instead to observe from afar. Though tensions occasionally flared, diplomacy prevailed, thanks in large part to Evelyn's unwavering belief in dialogue and understanding. On her final day as a teacher, Evelyn stood before her last class, gazing at the faces of students who reminded her so much of Jake, Sarah, and the others who had embarked on that fateful journey. "Remember," she told them, her voice soft but firm, "the stars are not just lights in the sky. They are possibilities waiting to be realized. Never stop asking questions, never stop dreaming, and never forget that we are stronger together than apart." As she walked out of the classroom for the last time, applause erupted behind her, a fitting tribute to a woman who had changed the course of history. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Evelyn paused, looking up at the twinkling constellations above. Somewhere out there, new adventures awaited, not just for her, but for all of humanity. And as the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of infinite horizons, Evelyn smiled. The journey was far from over,